Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Sam Harrison. I'm with CartoPac International. Just a little bit of history and housekeeping at the beginning. Welcome to our fourth webinar of the CartoPac Spring webinar series. For those who haven't been here the past couple of weeks, we're going to be touching on some things today that may engender some interest in other parts of the webinar series, so I'm just going to mention them quickly here. Back on May 7th, we introduced our new product, CartoPac Asset Manager, which is a platform that Jake and Justin will be touching on today a little bit, but it focuses on what happens after field data is collected and gives organizations a structured process to take that data and move it between roles and make transitions with that data based on various data states so that you can automate things like we're going to see today, setting up data for pods loading, or various pieces of viewing and editing and validation of that data as it moves through the organization. Next, on May 14th, we introduced some upgrades we've made to the CartoPac Windows tablet interface, specifically bringing a bunch of the features of the Windows 8 platform onto the mobile device for using tablets out in the field. On the last week, we were very pleased to have Doug Ruppel of W&M Environmental, who came in to talk to us about a solution that he's developed using the CartoPac technology stack, used to improve quality and accuracy of spill prevention, control, and countermeasures while reducing costs. So any of those are available by visiting the CartoPac website. And you can view them in the native GoToWebinar format that you're using today. And then, of course, today we're very pleased to have New Century here with us to talk about all the work we've been doing on a field to enterprise pods collaboration. Today, just to mention who the speakers are today, we have Jake Opdahl from CartoPac here, who's our technical sales manager, and then we have Justin Calvert from New Century Software, who's a technical sales engineer there. Just to do a little bit of housekeeping in terms of the format of the webinar is being recorded right now and will be available by the end of the week, either through the same registration link you used to get here today, or through the CartoPac or New Century Software websites, which will have hyperlinks that direct to that webinar recording by the end of the week. As I mentioned about those other webinars, if you're interested in seeing any of them, you can visit those on our website. There will be a couple of polls today where we ask for some feedback on some important drivers for maybe what brought you here today, or interesting parts of how you manage data with pods. And please give us an answer to those. It's definitely going to inform how the presenters, what they focus on during the webinar a little bit. If you have any questions during the webinar, we're going to have a focused Q&A at the end, but we invite you to go ahead and ask them while they're on your mind. You can type them into the questions box on the right, and those will come in to me, and then at the end I will direct those questions where they belong to either Jake or Justin, depending upon which part of the presentation they pertain to. And on that note, first I'm going to hand it over to Justin Calvert. Justin.
Thanks, Sam. So, New Century Software and CartoPac came together to develop this end-to-end field-to-pod solution. And what we really did was bridge the gap between the GIS data stored in your pod's database and that field data that you're collecting continually. The way we went about this was we developed a standardized and structured workflow, really focused on just making your data collection and your data upload more efficient, and also focusing on maintaining data integrity throughout the whole process. There are a number of things that led us to developing this solution, a number of key drivers. A lot of what we do in our industry is driven by regulatory compliance, and you need data behind that to adhere to those standards to make sure you're meeting those regulations. Again, a need for integration, bridging that gap between these two processes that are so close together but usually handled as two separate processes. Difficult to maintain custom software. I think there's a lot of people out there trying to solve this problem, developing a lot of homegrown solutions, but here at New Century Software and CartoPac, we take it upon ourselves to maintain the software to respond to changes when Esri releases a new patch or when something changed. We have the ability to maintain that software and let you guys focus on doing your work, on collecting that data or managing that data. Need for automation, making sure that this process is standardized, easy to carry out and maintain. Pods accessibility, want to get that data in there so your other users can use it, utilize that data. And then increase process visibility. Don't make this a black box where it's just collecting data and it goes in. We want to make sure you're involved in every step of the process and keeping tabs on what's happening and in maintaining that data as you work through your data collection and your data maintenance. The other drivers came from the industry itself. A lot of you guys were saying, I collected the data, now what do I do? How do I make it how do I get that to my users? We're implementing pods. How can we continue to update and maintain the field data with the pods database? Your data set is not static. You're going to need to continually enhance that. So how do you go about that? I need assurance that the data integrity is maintained. How do you do it correctly the first time instead of having to go back and clean up data? How do you make sure it goes in and the data that needs to be in your database is correct and accurate? And then how can I be sure that our data is accurate and reflects the most recently collected information? How do you get that to your users so that they can use it and know they're not duplicating efforts along the way? So that leads us to our first poll question. And we're just curious, how do you guys currently upload field collected data to pods? What's your current method for that? So if everybody just takes a moment here and votes on one of these answers. All right, it looks like everybody got an answer in there. Just to go through what we collected there, it looks like most of the attendees have a manual process in place to get that data, from their field units into their pods database. Second is going to be uploaded via custom software, so that might be homegrown or from a smaller vendor. 21% uploaded via another third-party software solution. 11% data upload, what data upload? So don't know, don't have anything in place yet. And then 9% is uploaded via CartoPac, so that's great. In that first manual process, that was 36%. So a majority of you, 36%, currently have a manual process in place. Great, thanks, Sam. So moving along, New Century and CartoPac came in this together. And from our side, from New Century Software, what we brought to this process is really our commitment to accuracy and quality. And when I say that, I mean our pods data expertise. Our New Century implementation of pods is backed by spatialized views. So not only do you get the benefits, the security of a relational database, but we also spatialize that tabular data so you can view that in ArcGIS, you can utilize that in ArcGIS, or in tabular format, whichever you prefer. We brought our expertise and integrated directly with CartoPac, so we have a seamless integration with them and their processes behind the scenes there. Jake, you want to speak real quick on CartoPac's piece of this process?
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Justin. So to follow along those lines, a little history here as well. CartoPac and New Century, this is really the result of a long relationship and the evolution of both the partnership and the technology. And what's really enabled us to take this next step in providing this end-to-end solution, not only the partnering and some of these other components we'll talk about, but there was a lot of strategic development that went into this. Both technology platforms, both from the CartoPac side and the New Century side, with recent releases of software applications, have allowed us to take this to the next step. Beyond just having two systems that are complementary, really integrating and beginning to automate some of those back-end processes of moving the data from the field to those final repositories and pods. As Justin had mentioned regarding some of the industry expertise, part of this partnership and one of the real benefits here is the complementary expertise coming from both New Century and CartoPac. New Century obviously very skilled and knowledgeable on the pods side and with these enterprise tools focused on implementing and managing these pods deployments. And on the CartoPac side, our long history on field data collection solutions, not only from a field perspective, enabling good workflows in the field, but tying this into the enterprise system. So it's really very complementary to bring these tools together and these industry expertise components together for this end-to-end solution. On the CartoPac side, some of the features, functionality, some of the aspects of the technology itself that really lend itself to a pods-based workflow is the ability to support some of these complexities of pods in a field data collection environment. So fully being able to support that pods relational schema, that database on the back end in the field, and we'll talk some more about that here in a little bit. And then finally, automating some of these processes. Again, as I mentioned, historically, we've worked with clients, in previous projects, both CartoPac and New Century, to really fill out kind of the two ends of the spectrum, but now taking it a step further and looking at ways to automate that loading process, which we'll talk about here a little bit more.
All right, so we'll start going through this process, and as you can see, this is a circular process here where you're checking out data, utilizing it, collecting data, and then getting it back into pods so it can be checked out again and used by your field crew. New Century is at the beginning and end of this process, and we're kind of behind the scenes here. At the very beginning of the process, we are taking that pod spatial implementation, and again, that pods relational database has things behind it that are very valuable. There's history and spatial schemas, so all your changes are tracked. The type of change, when it occurred, and who made that change is all going to be stored in the history of that database. Our implementation does this through a series of triggers, database triggers, and again, we have supplied views that are also spatialized, so you can utilize those in a tabular format or in ArcGIS in a graphic format there. So we're taking this data from pods, our spatialized view, our tabular data, and we're getting that out of your GIS, and this is just highlighting that, again, there's tabular data behind this. We're taking this and getting it into a spatial format that can be used inside of a GPS unit for data collection, inside of CartoPac's solution for data collection there. And at this point, this is where we hand it off to CartoPac to focus on what they're good at, which is the data collection side. So Jake, I'm going to pass it back to you here and let you walk through this part of the process.
Great, thanks Justin. Well, and as you saw on the graphic there that we've displayed, we're going to be walking through this kind of full loop is a term we've often used at CartoPac, and the full loop here including a lot of these key pods components. So as Justin had mentioned, we're starting and ending in that pods environment, and we're starting with some of that pods data spatialized, brought into the GIS via the New Century spatialized views. And so what we'll start with here is an example where in a field data collection process, at the beginning, so to speak, where we'll be pulling that information that we may need down to the device, such as that route center line, some of that existing data that's going to be relevant or helpful in the field data collection process. And so we'll start by downloading via CartoPac server. So as we walk through the demonstration here, a few key points to note. So as users enter this portal, if you will, to get the data they need onto the device, they can interface in a couple of different ways. What we'll be focusing on here today is the CartoPac server environment. So this is the out-of-the-box web application built on top of ArcGIS for server, allowing field personnel to move data in and out to and from the field, and then as we'll see later here, some of the back-end capabilities as well. We do have clients as well that are deploying the CartoPac server functionality within the new Century Software Centerline browser application. So you'll see a common theme throughout a lot of this is going to be some of the flexibility to meet your particular needs and or to leverage some of the existing tools you may have in-house. In addition, and again, Justin mentioned this, leveraging those spatialized views. So we're pulling data directly from pods, and we're pulling data in a way that we can use it spatially, right? So as you'll see here in the demonstration, we're going to pull down the center line, and we're going to be capturing data relevant to that. Another key aspect here in the overall process is the simplicity, the field user friendliness, if you will, of the overall application. So we're going to see in this example here, working from a tablet device, and we'll talk some more about those devices here in a moment, but it's a simple process to prepare that device or provision that device ready for use, pulling down the latest and greatest information that's relevant to the task at hand. So let's go ahead and take a look here. We're going to start by downloading some data. So in the CartoPac server environment, I can access my information, and I can move, navigate in the web map here, and download the appropriate solution. So in this case, we're using our demonstration solution here for this particular webinar, but a user can also have a number of different workflows that they might select here. Again, a lot of flexibility in how we set up these workflows and structure the overall process. So we'll be hitting this server in this case from the tablet itself. We've got an internet connection right now, and so we can hit the server, the web map, and download what we need. So a couple of quick clicks, and we've moved that data now down to the device. So from there, we're ready to do some field data collection. So we've downloaded information from the CartoPac server, and now we're moving into CartoPac Mobile. In this case, we'll be looking at CartoPac Mobile in a tablet environment. A few key points here before we jump into that. Traditionally, historically, CartoPac has always been very focused on making these friendly workflows. And from a field perspective, this is something that needs to meet the needs of the field personnel to allow them to gather the data they need to accomplish the task at hand without it being burdensome, right? But at the same time, behind the scenes, we're supporting the pod structure. We're supporting the pod's environment. We're collecting data in a manner that's going to be readily available and accessible for the new Century tools to load that information into the pod's system. You're going to see a number of things here on CartoPac Mobile in the data collection process that allows us to automate a lot of the information that's captured. And this is key from a couple of perspectives. One, simpler and more efficient for the field personnel. The less times that they have to tap on that screen or enter information, the faster the process is going to be. But it also ensures a higher quality data coming from the field. And we'll touch on that some more here in a moment, which will be key as this data moves through the validation process. As I mentioned, now we're in a disconnected environment. So I used the CartoPac server, whether I was in the office before I head out to the field or in a field office or in the work truck with my laptop and an air card, whatever the case may be, I needed that internet connection to get to the web map. But for the actual field data collection, we're in a disconnected environment, so there's no need for any internet connectivity here. And of course, you'll see some of the key concepts that kind of flow throughout here: location-based information, leveraging the GPS, capturing the key attribution, and making sure, again, this is very workflow-driven. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're now in the tablet environment. So we've downloaded that information, and in this case, we downloaded the route center line. It could be other spatial features that we may have wanted to bring down with us, whether it's other related assets to the pipeline, roads, what have you. But in this case, we've got some imagery in the route center line. You can see that I've got some tools here. If I fired up the GPS or GNSS in this case, by clicking on that icon, once I got a lock, I'd have a little red crosshair. We'll just be digitizing here in this case. And when the user taps that plus button, this brings up the dialog for adding a new record. What do we want to add? So for the purposes of the demonstration, we're going to be using this inspection workflow. But it could be that when you hit this drop-down, or when a particular field personnel, or based on what role they might be serving, you could have a long list of potential records or assets that they could collect or capture here. Again, very workflow driven. So in this case, we're doing an inspection, but you could have a whole list here: valves, meters, CP data, anything related to the pipeline or those assets there. Okay, so moving along here, we're going to go ahead and create our inspection. See a little pop-up here, and I'll explain what that's doing here in just a moment. So that little pop-up mentioned the GPS wasn't on and that we're going to use center of the screen and so on. Really what it's telling us is that we have some spatial queries behind the scenes here. Again, this goes back to automating some of that data capture. So we've automatically captured the state and county. We've used some spatial queries to pull in that information because we have that data underlying, right? We've also done some automation here on capturing the who and the when. So the field user I was logged in as was field user 1. So now we get to some of the additional data capture here, right? And we're going to be leveraging drop-down menus whenever we can, and these can be pulling directly from the PODS domains. They can be pulling from SDE subtypes and domains, lookup tables, a lot of flexibility here. In this example, we're out there. There's a buried line exposed. We've done an inspection. We found something, so we're going to mark manager review here. Again, these drop-downs are highly configurable dependent on your workflow. So this exposed pipe, we found some damage here, let's say, right? And we'll say it's external metal loss. So we've captured some basic information. You can see here, I'm going to pause this real quick. We've also automatically captured some of that information from the pipeline. So even though we're collecting a separate record, it's going to be related to that route, and we know the name or the route description in this case. It's queried that against the centerline value we've got there, as well as the line value and the route value. Now, PODS is going to want a beginning and an end point for this inspection. So from the form, we hit the beginning point. If we had GPS on, we would capture that automatically. In this case, we're digitizing it in. And we'll capture now the ending point for that exposure or that inspection. And so now we've captured both the inspection information as well as the spatial information here. So now that I've got all that information here, I may also want to capture some additional information, for example, comments. So we might want to put in a comment here, dig report 59634, and this information, then is going to make its way back in. We can see an attachments tab in there as well. So we could actually capture photos in the field using that integrated camera perhaps, or we might also be attaching other photos. So that's something we can do in the field, or as you'll see here in a moment, it's also something we can do on the back end to attach documents, relevant documents here to that particular record. Okay, and as you saw here, back up here just a little bit, we mentioned working on the tablet workflow. We've got a lot of existing deployments as well on some of the traditional high accuracy GPS units, the Trimble series, of course. So this is a application that can run on either, whether it be the ruggedized Windows Mobile high accuracy GPS, one of the more modern Windows 8 tablets, like you see the Dell Venue Pro 11 there in the picture, and that is something that could be leveraging a high accuracy GPS as well via Bluetooth, such as the Trimble Pro 6 or the Essex Blue 2. Okay, let's get back through here and get to the next bubble. So we've collected that data. We've exited out the application. We're ready to load that data up to the enterprise here. So this will be the server upload, essentially just like the download, only in reverse. And a couple of key points to touch on here. Again, ensuring to keep simplicity here as one of the focuses. Simplicity in moving that data to and from, and that's traditionally been one of the areas that has often been a bottleneck. Collecting the data, there may be some other good processes in which to do that, but getting that data into the system in some cases can be difficult. So we've simplified that, simple upload process. Another key piece here that sometimes is overlooked is in this upload process we're going to see a validation point. And some of the feedback we've gotten from field personnel that we've worked with is in prior field data collection workflows, whether they were doing it on paper, in an Excel doc, using other GPS-type technologies, very often they've done all this work to collect all this data, and they submit that information, whether it be through email or whatever process they might have, and they often feel it goes into this black hole. They don't know if it's made its way from point A to B. Once they've handed it off, there's no validation point. So we'll see some of that here in the next video and some of these other components, but it's been a key piece to provide a little bit of that validation from a field user's perspective as well. So in this case, we're uploading data into the CartoPac staging database, and we're going to see some preliminary field QA/QC in the CAM application here prior to the pod's load. So a takeaway here again is CartoPac's capability, and this really is what allows us to work in this pod's environment, to have a lot of flexibility as far as where are we exporting data from, where are we merging data to, leveraging different staging environments and so on. Okay, so now we're back on the CartoPac server here, and we're going to upload that information that we just collected. So the user is logged into the server. They'll click on Upload, and we'll bring that data collected. We'll bring the deltas back into that staging environment. So the user will walk through the wizard, and we are bringing it off of the tablet itself. And we can see there is the NCS inspection_demo project we just did, and we'll go ahead and upload that information. Now I apologize, the recording I did here cropped the data, so you can't see here 3 of 3 records merged. And that's actually, somewhat of an important detail because we've captured 3 different records, and these may be in multiple tables to support that pod's environment. However, from a field user's perspective, that was all done from a single form. It was a step-by-step process, simplified on the front end, supporting complexities on the back end. Okay, so I'll go ahead and finish there. All right, so that data is now into the staging environment, and as we zoom in and refresh the map here, you'll see that information just showed up here. And we actually had an inadvertent click that brought open some of the CAM tools, which we'll look at here in a minute. We'll close that. But this in itself here, I'm going to pause here for just a moment. This little bit of validation itself can be very powerful and relevant. We can see from a field user's perspective, I've uploaded my information. Yes, those are the points that I collected. And then you'll see here in the CAM workflow some additional abilities, whether it just be for some basic validation that my data is where it needs to be, as well as potentially some additional interaction with that data. But that in itself can be very powerful, knowing that we've gotten that into the system. Okay. So from there, we're almost ready to hand this back over to the new Century tools. But before we do that, we're going to show you a little bit of the CartoPac Asset Manager, some of the validation tools. We're not going to go in great detail here. As Sam mentioned earlier, we did a webinar on CartoPac Asset Manager. By all means, please do check out that recorded webinar or contact us if you'd like to see some of this one-on-one in a live scenario. But we're going to look at this in the perspective of this end-to-end pod solution because the final state, if you will, of the data from a CartoPac Asset Manager perspective will be putting it into that ready for pods load state so that New Century can then take over from there and begin processing that through pod staging and into pods. Okay, so a few key points that we'll focus on for this component. And Sam mentioned some of this before, so I may breeze through some of it here, but CAM provides this structured yet very configurable process for validation, approval, could be rejection, the field data. Okay. Now, I mentioned some of the validation from a field user's perspective. In some workflows, the field personnel may want to have some additional interaction with the data. And the CartoPac server and CartoPac Asset Manager, or CAM, gives users the ability to interact with that data in the web application. You've heard us mention a couple of times these states, and really behind the scenes with CAM, it's all about the states and the transitions that make up a workflow, and that can be very permission-driven, and hopefully you'll get a little glimpse of that here in the demonstration. And then finally, the data has been uploaded to the staging database, which in this case is SDE, and we'll be moving through those states and again prepared for the pods load. Okay, so let's see here. Let me just back that up a little bit at the beginning. All right, so we've uploaded the data. Now we can go into CAM and browse collected features. So I'm going to pause here. This tabular view allows us to see all of the records, and in this case, all the records for field user 1. That was the field user name here in this example. And so I see all the records relevant to me. We can see the inspection, this is the inspection that we just uploaded, all right, in the previous video there, as well as the endpoint and the beginning point. So 3 separate records, but something that we'll touch on here is that these are all actually grouped together in the workflow and will move along together, as a group. So there's some things we can do to group records together. Even though they may be going into different tables, they need to stay together because it's all part of this inspection, right? Okay. So we can see it's currently in the uploaded state, and we can go into the details here. Now, field personnel may or may not want to go into this level of detail. Again, it's dependent on your workflow. But you can see we saw the attribution, and there's some additional tools that we have available here. So it may be that we want to go in and enter data into a comments field. Perhaps we've made that editable. There was golf ball size hail when I was out there collecting data. I had to get out of there, and I didn't want to click on the little keypad to enter comments. So we could come in here to the CAM environment and enter our comments for that record here. Or you can see we're adding, in this case, processing notes. So this is very CAM specific in that it's entering the specific notes for perhaps the state that I'm in right now, right? I'm in this uploaded state, and I want to enter this information. All of this information is going to travel with the record, right? So we'll have a full audit trail here. We'll have a history. So just back that up a little bit here. Once I'm done doing any additional interaction, and again, this could be automated if your workflow is such that the field user collects data and they upload it and they're done, they go on to their next task unless something in the rejection process pushes it back out to them. It may automatically step through these steps for them. But you can see here in this example, I'm going to go ahead and submit that data, and it's going to move it to the next state. Now, in this particular example, I'm going to pause here again. We're not really going to focus on the states and the CAM specifics here, but what actually has happened is because I checked that box for damage or anomaly found, we have an automated state built into this example where if damage found equals yes, it automatically goes into this anomaly detected state. Right? So as a field user, it's automatically there. It's gone into somebody else's queue, a manager's for review, whatever that process might be, and I'm done here from a field user's perspective. Okay, so for the field user, that might be it. They might be on to their next data collection process. I may want to come back and browse additional features if I have additional work to do. Okay, so now let's look at this from another user's perspective. In this case, logging in as the site administrator, I'm going to see everything here just to move this through the process. I can use my extent to go find a particular geographic area. I can see the data there, and again, I can go to the browse feature tool And now I've got all of the records that are within my queue that are ready for me to perform some type of task. Right? So you can see here it's now in the anomaly detected state, which was an automated state. So my job may be then to go look at the details. Again, perhaps there's some associated ILI data here, or there's some other supporting documentation that I'm using for my review. Perhaps my job here is to see if this is going into just regularly scheduled maintenance or if there's an immediate repair needed. Again, we're kind of just glossing over some of those details here to get to the end pod's load component. So let's say that I've done my review and I say, you know what, this data shows me that this can go into regularly scheduled maintenance. So I don't necessarily need to send this for immediate repair. So I might have different options, different states that I can then push it to. In this case, we're going to say repair not required. So use your imagination here that I've done my due diligence to actually get to that state. So they've submitted that, and now that perhaps goes into somebody else's queue. All right. Perhaps we want to add some additional processing notes here, and we can move that along. And again, there'll be historical tracking of all of these different notes throughout the process. So again, we're saying normal maintenance, no immediate repair. We'll add that note. So again, we could come in here at any time to see these different notes and look at the state history. We see it went from uploaded to the anomaly detected and so on and so forth. But finally, as the data is moved through the appropriate workflow in CAM, that last step, again, is going to be moving this to pods. So it may be an automated state, or in this case, manually, where we're pushing this ready for load. So it's now gone into the state, and you can see it's a successful state change. And now this data is ready to move into the next step and move into pod staging. So at this point, it may be automated. We may be calling an API here, and really a lot of this can be fully automated behind the scenes so that data is moving into that pod staging environment that Justin's going to cover here next.
All right, so we're at the last step in the process here, and this data that Jake collected is now going to go from the unit, from the CartoPac solution, and behind the scenes, New Century is going to load this data into pods. So I mentioned earlier it's a seamless integration. So everything's mapped from the CartoPac database into the appropriate tables and pods. And once it's loaded, it's going to be put into a staging database. It's a staged environment that lets you upload these records into the pods database and gives you an opportunity to approve or reject them before it goes into your production database. Okay, so what we have here on the left is going to be the view you would see if you use New Century Software's Facility Manager. It's kind of hard to see. It doesn't read well in our slide here, but the record is highlighted indicating that it's in the staged environment, but it's not in production. It's not live. So the user knows that there's something there that needs to be looked at. If they go into our admin application, that's where they can go in and review the records that were submitted by their field crew. This is the staging record right here and what states it's been in down at the bottom there. And this is where that gatekeeper, the GIS manager, whoever is managing that data, what goes into POD's production, chooses to accept or reject or delete that record. So if they accept it, that data is going to be entered into POD's production. It's going to be live, and next time that the data is downloaded to the units, it will be included. If it's rejected, then the field crew would be notified that something needs to be resolved. They need to go reinspect something or resolve an issue. They can do that. They can resubmit the record, and then the gatekeeper there will have the opportunity to accept or reject that change as well. If they delete it, it just gets deleted. It's not in that process anymore. So that's the value of pod staging, is that not only is the field crew collecting that data, and they have an opportunity to see that their work is complete on their end as far as they know. But again, we have another set of checks here before the data goes into pods production to make sure that everything that needs to get in is getting in and everything else doesn't. The technology that's loading this from the CartoPac database into the pods database is the same process that we use in our applications here at New Century Software. So this is used by our Express Loader application. This is used by Facility Manager, if you guys are familiar with those applications. So this isn't some new process. It's been out there. It's been used in the industry. We've got feedback on it, and it's been tested. So you can be assured that New Century's expertise in pods, data loading, and making sure that the data that needs to get in is back there behind the scenes. This last slide here, we're right back where we started. So you can see how this can be useful for continually updating or enhancing your data set if you have field crews out there just collecting bits of information that are gaps in your data. It can continually be updated, checked into pods, verified before loaded into pods, and then brought back onto the unit so those field crews can know for sure that data has already been collected. So with that, Jake, if you have anything to add at this point.
Thanks, Justin. Well, I think that's a good coverage there of kind of the full loop, and I don't know if we have time for that third poll. We might want to just move to the questions component, unless that's something we want to take a moment for. But otherwise,
about a quarter till.
We can move into the Q&A section, make sure we've got ample time here for any questions that have come up, and we'll let Sam moderate as he's got the questions that have come in front of him, and we can address as many of those as we've got time for here today.
All right, great. First question was, we have workflows that contain both pods and non-pods data. Can the system accommodate delivery to multiple locations?
Yeah, and that's one that I think I can handle from a CartoPac perspective, and that's actually fairly common. We have clients today that operate under that same structure where there's both pods data and non-pods data that's being collected and in the field and needing to be managed. So one of the benefits of CartoPac, again, going back to one of the previous discussion points, is this flexibility in configuration of where I'm pulling data from and where I'm loading data to. And within a single workflow even, we can be pulling data from multiple data sources, and we can be merging data to multiple data sources. So a field data collection process may involve something much like what you've seen in the example here today, very pod specific, but there may be additional data that we're loading directly into an SDE environment or directly into another RDBMS environment that doesn't necessarily fall under that pods umbrella. So hopefully that addresses that question.
Great. And second question, for the different projects, do you have numerous staging tables similar to versions or one set of tables?
Is that for the New Century staging solution there?
I couldn't answer that. Yes, for the New Century.
Yeah, I'll answer as if it is. That's going to be, for different projects, that would be, it's going to be one set of tables, but we have workflows in place as far as maintenance events that we can tie those records back to, so you can pull up that specific information.
Great. This one will be going back to you again, Justin. We currently use NCS-FM and Express Loader. Would this solution utilize our existing NCS investment, or is there additional software required from a New Century software perspective?
There's additional software in the administration app that I had shown, where you approve and reject records. There's also a slight database modification. We're essentially enhancing the PODS database or extending certain tables in there that manages those staged records. So if you have a current New Century software PODS implementation, you're pretty close, but there are a couple changes on the database and then the administration app that would be included. But once you have staging, the new release of Express Loader will have staging built into that, as well as Facility Manager will as well. So, yes.
Okay, this one I'll forward to Jake. Is the GPS data accuracy native to the device and/or receiver, or does CartoPac allow for Trimble post-processing?
Well, that's a great question, and I guess the answer is yes and yes. You can collect GPS data autonomously via NEMA string, but we are a Trimble business partner, and so for a long time we've supported post-processing utilizing the Trimble SSF files, if you will. So if you're using a Trimble device such as a Geo7 or a Geo6000, or if you're using a tablet with a Pro 6 Bluetooth capability, we're collecting that data in Trimble format. And then what we've done is within the CartoPac server, we have the post-processing actually automated. So if you're familiar with Trimble post-processing right now, you're probably doing that in Pathfinder Office or via Positions or other manners that are out there. But we've actually taken the underlying code via the SDK provided from Trimble for Pathfinder Office, and we can leverage that behind the scenes. So much like you saw in that CAM workflow, data moving from state to state, there can be geoprocessing type states, if you will. One of those could be post-processing. It's not specific to CAM only. Even without CAM, we have that automated post-processing in place. So you've got flexibility as far as GPS accuracy. It is dependent on whether or not you're using just an integrated GPS on a tablet that may not be very high accuracy, or if you are using a Trimble device, we can post-process that data. We can also support real-time differential correction via like a VRS network, something like that. So a lot of flexibility on the GPS and GNSS side.
Great. Next question. Is the solution specific to existing centerline, or is it set to manage new centerline data collection?
Well, I suppose that's something that either of us could touch on, Justin, but from a CartoPac perspective, it can be either or. We can be working off of an existing centerline, or we can also be capturing new centerline values, or rectifying, validating, and verification of spatial accuracy, things of that nature.
Yeah, that's, from what I understand, that is correct. So it's going to be able to create new records there, new center lines, whatever records you're capturing in the field. If they're new, it has the ability to collect new records.
All right, next question. I think this will probably go to you, Justin. PODS is currently looking at developing a new construction module. How much engagement has there been to ensure that this solution is aligned with what's being proposed by PODS?
Right. So I probably am not the best person to speak to that. I don't know much about how far along that process is. From what I understand, it's fairly young. So I don't know how well integrated they will be, but I would assume, as that develops, New Century is going to be looking at what comes from that and tailoring our solution based on how PODS is going to consume that new construction data.
Okay, another question back to you, Justin, is a question for New Century. Is this a parallel solution to Fast Track?
They're kind of, I would say they're two separate things. Fast Track is more of a data processing service that we provide to quickly turn data around and get it back to you, your GIS team, and the other users to make decisions, with that new data that's constantly changing. This solution is more tailored to, it could be used for new construction, but it's going to be if you have your team out on the ground collecting that data, and as well as enhancing your GIS data. So it's not restricted to just new construction. It's more data collection focused, whereas Fast Track is a service that is focused directly on new construction and data processing.
Great. We'll take a couple more here. Jake, this one I think will be for you. How does the mobile application handle the highly normalized and complex structure of pods in a field data collection workflow?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, we didn't really go into detail when we looked at the example, the video demonstration, but if you think back to the workflow I showed where field users collecting an inspection record, they're also collecting GPS values, beginning and an end point, and all of that within one workflow. But while behind the scenes we're actually supporting a number of different data tables and the relationships therein built into pods. So that's one of the key components with CartoPac. One of the key benefits with CartoPac is in CartoPac we can actually fully support these complex relational and normalized database structures such as pods. Another piece that we really just kind of glossed over then on the back end, once that data is coming into the system in CAM, we're actually able to group a lot of those records. So that inspection workflow had a number of different tables behind the scenes associated with it. And that was all grouped together so that that data would move together through the system and then eventually able to load into the appropriate tables and pods.
Okay, and then I think I have one more question here for Jake. Can CartoPac Asset Manager be configured to handle different validation workflows as well, or just the pods loading?
Yes, it can. It's a very configurable application. So, again, we really kind of glossed over a lot of the details. And in fact, I believe in the upcoming summer webinar series, we're going to focus in at least one of the webinars on some of the configuration tools, in particular with CAM, how you can configure these workflows. But you can have n number of different workflows based on different states and transitions and the permissions associated, the different roles, who has access to what, when it moves to this state, whose queue is it in. So a number of different types of workflows could be applied in the CAM configuration. And much like we showed here today where it ends in a transition to pods, it could involve other transition components as well, such as integrating with an SAP or Maximo type of environment, or launching different geoprocess tools, perhaps a custom Python script that you've built to perform certain geoprocessing on the back end. Could be part of a state where that is automatically launched. So we're early on. This is the initial release of CAM, and there's going to be a lot of growth over the coming months with the features and functionality. But from a foundational component, the architecture is such that it will provide a foundation in which you can configure, really a number of different workflows to meet your particular needs.
All right, great. If you just advance to that last slide, a question did come in that really is for both of you, but I'll go ahead and answer it. If I want to see a more in-depth demo, which company should I contact? And the answer to that is either or both. And Jake and Justin can get to scheduling a conference call between all parties. So thanks for that question.
Yeah,
set up my last slide nicely.
To follow up on that real quick as well, Sam, as Sam mentioned, if you've got existing contacts that you work with at either company, be it New Century or CartoPac, either of them can get you going in the right direction. And our plan would be to again take this partnered approach, and we could come in together to kind of show you the end-to-end tools, and that way you'll have expertise on both sides to answer questions both on the CartoPac side and the New Century side.
Thanks again all for coming. It's been a great May, 4 really good webinars. For anyone interested, we haven't announced dates yet, but our summer webinar series will be coming up. We do have a gas distribution solution that is really a COTS solution that we'd like to tell you more about. Similarly, we've been working with EDM, engineering company here in Fort Collins, really one of the foremost experts in the electric utility world. And then we'll be doing some more webinars on some other highlights of the CartoPac platform, talking some more about the configurability of both CAM and of the digital forms using Studio. So thanks again all for coming. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Justin. And if anyone has any further questions, feel free to take them offline and get in touch with us either here or get in touch with Justin at New Century. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.